Hey, we're back. 10-minute Tanya. Today we are going to talk about how what you know dictates what you think, what you do, and what you desire. And that's all about the animal soul. We're going to talk about the garments of how you clothe your animal soul, and just how we talked about before, where you can clothe your godly soul in super nice spiritual clothing. Today we're going to talk about how you can actually dress down, not in a I work from home because it's COVID and now I can work in shorts kind of way, but in a degrading kind of way, how you can degrade your soul with the garments of the animal soul. So let's talk about that. We know that there's 10 faculties. The three intellectual faculties, chokhmah, bina, and dat, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. And then there's 7 emotive attributes, which allow you to feel what you feel, and that ultimately leads to action. Now, how does this work? How does knowing what you know translate into what you do? Let me give you a really good example. If a child needs to get vaccinated and let's not get into the politics of vaccines or not, but let's just assume for right now that vaccines are good and they help you. If a child needs to get vaccinated in order to not get sick later, the child is too young to understand that the vaccine is actually good for him. All the child knows is that it's going to hurt when he gets a shot, and that his parents, who he loves, are betraying him by giving him a shot at the doctor's office. That's what the child knows. So the child doesn't understand that it's actually good for him. He sits there and is like, what the hell, guys? Why are you poking me with this needle, with this random nurse and doctor? I'd rather go home and watch Cocomelon, right? So because the child lacks an understanding of what is good for him, he now not only isn't happy about it, he's upset about it, he cries out, it changes his actions. The same thing happens with our godly souls and our animal souls. Now, as it relates to the animal soul, a lack of awareness of how the world works, of how God created it, how God is behind nature, and how God is actually the sustaining life force behind everything. If you lack that awareness, you now feel like things seem to exist on their own. And this is the power of the klipa, the power of the shell, of the rind. That God said, okay, I have to give you guys a way to exist. And in order for there to be a test for you to feel like you are, accomplishing something, for me to be able to give you credit for accomplishing something, I have to hide the fact that I give you life at all times. Because if you felt me there, if you felt my connection, you would never sin ever. And all you would do is what you think I want you to do. Because if you notice that and you're aware of it, how could you ever want to cut yourself off from your life force, right? From what sustains you? You wouldn't. So God had to create this world where the world is here and we feel like we exist without him. How did he do that? He did that via the klipas, via the rinds or the shells, where he says, okay, on the inside, if you could see through the shell, you would see that there's godliness, because I have to create this at all times or else it ceases to exist, because I created all of it. And things don't exist independently of me. They exist because I am giving them the power to exist. But I have to wrap them in a shell so you see the shell. You don't see what's inside. You don't see the orange. I mean, I know people eat orange, whatever. But you have to in order to have a test where you can overcome and you can achieve, you cannot be aware of that life force. So God created all these worlds in this order of descent from high to low, where the higher worlds feel like they have godliness in them until they work their way down, where we get to this lowest of the lows, where we feel like God does not exist, where there is a way for half the world to say there is no God, and the other half of the world to say we believe in God. Belief means we don't know for a fact, but we believe, okay? Because we can't prove it. Now, why is this all important? Because the way that the klipas work, the way that these shells work, affects how our actions take place because of our awareness and understanding. Meaning, just like the child analogy before, where we talked about a child not knowing and therefore he gets upset. When we can't differentiate between the fact that there's godliness inside of everything in this world, it's just hidden, and thinking that things just exist without God, when you don't really know that, and we talked about knowledge, you have to have the idea, you have to understand it in full, and then you start to feel it and you know it. When you don't know that, it's very difficult to see the godliness in things. It changes your desire and your purpose as far as practical Torah and mitzvah application go. Because if I don't feel like godliness is in something, and I feel like I'm not sustained by God, what desire or drive do I have to do what God wants? If it's just about me, and I don't realize that there's a higher power that's giving me the ability to exist, and that gave me these rules to follow for my good and for his, and for the good of the world, what is going to push me to do what he wants? What's good for me spiritually, what my godly soul wants? And that's really the test of this entire world. To get yourself to know via your intellect, meaning if you were able to teach the child, when the child gets to a certain age, that the vaccine that he's getting is actually protective, it's going to help him later on. That child won't kick and scream. Now, it might still hurt a little bit, but you're not going to kick and scream. That level of understanding changes the desires. So if you don't understand that what goes on between a kosher animal and a non-kosher animal, and how there's ability to refine the sparks of positivity, of godliness that sustain the kosher animal spiritually, then for you they're all just animals and food. There's no driving factor behind it because you don't know. So that affects your desires because you don't have an understanding that what happens when you eat kosher versus not. You don't have an understanding of the ability to refine the sparks of godliness within mundane things by simply utilizing them properly. You don't have that knowledge. So why would your desire follow suit? Why would your 7 emotive attributes of your animal soul, why would your thought, speech, and action in physicality, why would they follow what you don't even know? You have to know these things, which is why the point of all of this is that the intellect births all of your emotions. The chokhmah bin adat of the godly soul and of the animal soul drive the rest of the 7 emotive attributes. And the 7 emotive attributes, chesed, gvura, tiferet, all of those things, those are now used to make you feel things. And when you feel something, you now desire something based on that. So the test of this world is that, yes, half of us is built from this animal soul, and this animal soul has unclean thought, speech, and action. And so if you want something that's not permissible to you, and you think it's good for you because that's what the intellect of the animal soul tells you, then your emotions now want that. You feel a crave, you feel a burning, right? Those things are now driven by what you understand. And the key to all of this is that what you know dictates what you want, and what you want dictates what you do. If you don't want to be impure, if you don't want to go against the Torah, you have to educate yourself to understand what's really going on behind the scenes, to understand that there is a klipa, there's a shell that's concealing the actual godliness that's going on. If you even believe it and you study it enough and internalize it, now when you see impure things, you'll understand that they look impure and you don't want them, because there is a godliness behind all of it. All right, more in the next one.